Today on the podcast, Kyle is going to break down the 3 questions you should be asking at every listing presentation that you're probably never even heard of. He's going to talk about 3 tools or questions that you can break down regarding financing and how that makes not only you more likely to get the listing, but also it helps your listing become a lot more attractive to buyers and help you get that listing sold. That's on this week's episode of Real Estate Podcast, The Whissel Way. Kyle, the holy grail of real estate, people always talk about they want more listings, they want more sellers. How do you get sellers? Regardless of really if you're in a buyer's market or a seller's market, having listings is always kind of having the golden key in your pocket. Would you agree?
Yes.
So today I want to talk about how can we win more listings by asking the right questions, and some questions that I think realtors on here I know aren't asking, but 2, they might not even know to ask. So I want to know what the important questions are and kind of give some information on that.
Yeah, so for sure, we're going to dive into questions that are very specific to the market we're in today. We're recording this here at the end of October, beginning of November.
2023.
2023. Yeah, well, this one, we don't always like time and date stamp these things, but this one's important too because we're in a market where rates are 8% today. And there's things that you should be putting out on social media and things that you should be asking in your listing appointments and even on the phone with your potential listing appointments that can completely separate you from the competition and help you actually get those listings. And then when you get them sold too, because that's becoming, right, as this market is shifting from a seller's market, we're right about in the middle now, shifting toward a buyer's market. It's not just a matter of getting the listing, but you got to get it sold too. So we're going to dive into all of that today.
Very cool.
Awesome. My name is Kyle Whissel, your host with eXp Realty in San Diego.
And I'm Bryan Coachy, Director of Marketing here at Whissel Realty Group.
The goal of the show is to give you the tools, techniques, and tactics to go out there and crush it in your business. The way that we like to do that is to answer the questions that you have for us. So if you ever have a question or a topic you want to discuss on the show, you can always go to thewhisselway.com. You can ask us questions on there, subscribe to the podcast and YouTube channel, join our private Facebook group and email newsletter. We share some tips and tricks, and get dialed in with our video content creation course called the Media Mayor Mastermind. Bryan, I'll teach you everything we've learned over the last 8+ years of creating videos together. Before we do, I am a man of my word, and a bet is a bet. So I have a debt to pay here. A buddy of mine, DJ in Florida, is a huge Jaguars fan. I am a huge Buffalo Bills fan. Our 2 teams clashed recently, and it didn't go so well for the Bills. So our wager was, first, I have to buy DJ this hideous jersey. And the second, I have to wear this jersey. So I'm going to just pay my bet today, and I'll wear my jersey for this episode of the podcast.
I'm excited. Now, it's a kid size large.
It is very small. DJ and I are not the same size, but we're going to make it work. This is what my actual football jersey used to fit like.
Yeah, so. Except more in the shoulders. And
so we'll rock it for the rest of the podcast today.
Don't you have to roll up the belly?
Well, if you got your pads on, yeah.
For those of you listening to the podcast. I have different
kind of pads now.
If you're listening to the podcast, Kyle is wearing a snug Jacksonville Jaguars number 16 jersey. You could play on their Pop Warner team anytime.
I haven't worn a medium since I was like 12, but here we are. So,
all right, DJ, this is for you.
All right, let's roll.
Cool. So let's talk about.
You're not gonna do the arm thing to like shift gears? Okay,
let's go. So first, we need to learn how to get the listings before we sell them, right? And so what are some questions we need to ask above and beyond? Normally, we show our listing presentation. We talk about our marketing plan. We talk about our stats. We do all that. Yeah. We've done a podcast on exactly that. But what do we need to do above and beyond that? Because we just taught everyone how to do that. What's next?
Yeah, so I think we've talked a lot about like converting seller leads and listing presentations and all the basics. But today I want to go deeper into the questions that you're not asking that you should be asking that will completely separate you from the competition. Because most sellers, now if you work like a sphere-based business, you probably aren't competing very often, but you probably aren't going on many listing appointments right now either. I've seen a lot of agents, including ones in our office, that are very sphere-based that have had tough years, where agents who are very prospecting-based and taking a lot of internet leads and stuff have had much better years because you need those new leads coming in. The problem is when you're taking those types of leads or where you're doing prospecting, circle dialing, expireds, FISBOs, FURBOs, all that stuff, you're competing more often than not on those. So how do you make yourself stand out? And so the biggest thing to understand is we are in an 8% rate market right now. Like, it is freaking crazy. There are no buyers buying and there's really no sellers selling, right? There's no buyers buying because it's too damn expensive. There's no sellers selling because they don't want to, right? It's too damn expensive. They don't want to sell and, sell at a 3 or 4% rate and then go buy at a 7 or 8% rate. It's just too damn expensive. So there's just not a lot of movement happening, but there's some things that a lot of people aren't asking, aren't even thinking about, possibly don't even know is possible in this market. So there's 3 primary things that I want to focus on today that we need to ask about when we are meeting with a seller. So the first thing is that we should be doing our research when we go into these appointments and understanding what kind of financing did this person use when they purchased this property? How long ago was it? Have they done any refinances? Like, I like to do a little research in advance. Now, I know not every state, this is not possible everywhere. Here in California, I can, all the title companies give us a website I can go to and I can look and I can find out when was it purchased, what price, what kind of financing, how much the loan was, has it been refied? Like, we can do all that in California. Sorry if you're in other states, you can't do that. But
Canada probably can't even know if it's ever been sold before. They're pretty strict up there.
Surprisingly, Texas is like pretty locked down on sold data. Like, it's hard to get a lot of sold data in Texas, surprisingly.
All right.
So I like to know, did this person finance it or did they pay cash, right? If they paid cash and there's been no loans attached to that property, then they probably own that property free and clear still to this day. Or if somebody had a loan on it and it's been 30 plus years, they haven't refinanced it ever, they probably own it free and clear. There's a lot of scenarios where somebody could own a home free and clear. Also, even if somebody only owes a little bit, they're close to free and clear. So first thing I'm doing is looking for those opportunities. And if I am, when I go in to meet with that seller, I am going to ask questions to find out if they have an appetite to potentially carry the paper, carry the note on that, or what's deemed a seller carryback. A lot of agents aren't asking about this ever. They just assume every single seller wants to cash out. And that's not necessarily the case. Because if they do cash out, so they sell the home, they take the cash out, what are they going to do with that money? If they're just going to go put it into a savings account or even like, high yield CD account today is like 4 or 5%, like, that's not bad. But if you're going to sell and just put the money in the bank and then put it into something that earns 4 or 5%, there is a better option. And that option is to do seller financing on that property. So instead of taking all the cash out and then just putting it into something that pays 4 or 5%, what if they could leave the money in the property, but instead get 7, 8, 9, 10% interest? They could get significantly more than if they actually took the cash out of the property. So they can go from being the seller to being the bank. And now instead of that buyer getting a loan through Wells Fargo, they're going to get a loan through the seller, and the seller becomes the bank. And now the seller is going to collect some points up front. So they're going to get a little cash infusion up front. They're going to get down payment money. And then they're going to charge the buyer whatever rate they negotiate. But typically buyers, if they're doing seller financing, they're expecting to pay at or above market on that rate.
Why would they pay above market?
Because they probably can't go get a loan from a bank. So they're probably in a scenario where if they went to a bank, they don't check the boxes that are needed for the bank to provide them traditional financing, which is why they'd be more open to seller financing, because they don't have to check the same boxes. Now, a seller should do some qualification, but it's not ever going to be nearly as stringent as a bank's qualifications. So a buyer would do this and pay a higher than market rate because there is no other option. They can't go buy otherwise. They can't afford to buy anything otherwise. And then the seller would do it because if they take the money out and they go put it in the bank, they're getting 4 or 5% on the money at best, right? Unless they go invest it. But if they're just going to put it in the bank, it's 4 or 5%. So why not do a carryback and get 8, 9, 10% on the money, as opposed to just putting it in a CD and getting 4 or 5%? They could probably get twice as much on that money.
Now, are there I have no idea if, as a homeowner myself, how I would do that.
Here's what's funny, right? Like you own a home and you don't even know about this, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing is most realtors don't know about this or don't understand why somebody would do it. But the scenario I just gave is where it could be mutually beneficial for both parties.
Now, are there tools, or do you just like, do I write a contract? Do you connect with a lawyer, or do you just be like, send me a check by the 15th of every month? Like how does, I'm sure there's some sort of something.
So the beauty in California is that they have a form literally in our system called Zip Forms. There's a form specifically for seller financing. It's called a seller financing addendum or an SFA. So even if you're not in California, you could just Google California Association of Realtors form SFA or seller financing addendum. You could find it even if you're not in California. You can just Google it. You'll find a copy of it. So our association has been great to provide us with a form where now we can just go through that form and ask the questions of what's the term, what's the rate, what's the points, like all of those questions. So that will get built in through escrow. Escrow will help draft up a note, or potentially you could have an attorney draft the note based on what's on that seller financing addendum. They're going to draft the note and the buyer is going to sign your loan docs with you at close as opposed to signing them with the bank. And now you become the bank. And then you could either collect the money yourself, or you typically would hire a servicing company and they just take a small fee then they send the statements out, they collect the payments, they do everything for you.
What would you Google to find a servicing company?
Loan servicing company.
Sweet.
Yeah. The one that we've used is called FCI. I don't know if they do nationwide, but they for sure do here in San Diego.
So at least you can start with that.
FCI,
Look what keywords.
Frank, Charlie, Igloo.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then you can look at what keywords they use, search in your area. Cool.
Yeah. So you just hire a service. Some escrow companies will draft, or title companies will draft the note for you. Some will tell you need to hire an attorney to draft the note for you. And then you're hiring a servicing company to take care of the payments.
And so the seller financing, why this is important is, one, if you're going on the listing presentation, you can say, hey, have you thought about this? You can make a lot more return on your money than if you're just throwing it in the bank. Or if they said, I'm just going to, so that's good for them, but it's also good to help you get it sold, because now it opens your buyer pool.
You're offering something that other people aren't.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Because now not only can your traditional buyer that qualifies for a normal loan buy your home, now somebody who maybe needs some outside the box, some untraditional financing opens it up. Now, sure, there's risk, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if they can't qualify for a loan, why? So naturally there's risk, but that's where you're going to charge a higher rate. You're going to do a loan to value. When you do seller financing, you determine what's the loan to value. You determine how many points. You determine what the interest rate is. You determine, is it fully amortized or is it interest only? You determine, can they keep the loan for 30 years or do they have to pay it off in 3 years? A balloon payment. Like, you determine everything. You're the bank. Whatever the hell the Bank of Bryan wants is what you get. And if the buyer doesn't want it, that's fine. They can just go buy the next home they can't qualify for. So.
And these buyers that may not qualify, give me some categories. The couple that I was thinking off my head were, if they've switched industries lately and they haven't been at that job for 2 years. Another one is if they're selling things that aren't maybe federally legal, but legal in the state. I know there are some cash-only businesses. I can't think of any others besides one. What other things would be...
Cash businesses where a lot of money goes under the table, doesn't get reported to the IRS. Like, we're in industries where we have, in real estate, you tend to have high income, but you have high write-offs. So you're able to show that you had high income, but you wrote it off. In that case, you can get like a bank statement loan. There's loans for that. But if you work, especially like contractors, it's very regular, where a lot of their stuff is under the table. It's cash. Like, they're not necessarily ever even showing any of that income. Like, we show it and we write it off. If somebody doesn't show the income, but could prove to you, like, hey, here's all the invoices I did over the last 12 months. I can prove to you I did, $2 million worth of jobs. That's for the revenue that I collected. I just didn't take all of it and put it in the bank and claim it on taxes. So there's that, which you mentioned, where somebody recently changed jobs and that's not good enough for, traditional type financing. There's a million situations.
And then what about doctors and lawyers that have a lot of schooling fees?
There's loans specifically for them, because people understand there's a lot of stuff lenders do is stupid, but there's lenders that understand, you have a ton of student debt, right? Because you had to go to school for 10 years for some of these jobs, but you're now making $500,000 a year. Like, we get it. We understand you owe that, but we also understand you're making 500 grand a year. So it's all good.
All right. So number one, the
Seller
first
financing.
primary tool is seller carryback or seller financing.
Yes.
And that's great if the homeowner owns 90% or more on their home.
Yeah, because they could still have debt, but a buyer is going to come in with a down payment. So they could wipe out your existing debt. Let's say your house is worth $1 million and you owe $100,000 on it, but you tell a buyer, hey, if you come in and I seller finance it, I want 25% down. So what you could do is take 100, pay off the existing debt, and put 150,000 in your pocket, and then collect, let's say 10% on that 750,000 for whatever period of time you decide to go with.
Cool.
I made that sound appealing, huh?
Yeah.
Because again, if you're just going to take the money and put it in the bank, right, or put it in just some basic stuff, you probably are better off leaving it in the real estate market because you have 75% debt to, or loan to value. So if here, what's funny, when you become the bank, the worst case scenario in that situation is that the buyer just pays you on time every month. Best case scenario is the buyer doesn't pay you. You take the house back. You already got $250,000. Now you get the house back at a $750,000 valuation. Let's just assume the value hasn't moved. You get the house back at $1 million. You just made 250 grand. That's actually best case scenario is they don't pay. Worst case scenario is they do pay. How crazy is that?
You're like, I hope they default. That's horrible.
You don't, because there's more work, but financially it's best case scenario.
All right. So that's one tool. You say you have 3 of them.
Yeah. Number 2 is going to be, is it an assumable loan that's on there? So there's 3 loans that are assumable by default. That is a USDA loan, U.S. Department of Agriculture, FHA, and VA. Those loans are all assumable by default. A lot of people don't know that. All of those loans are assumable. People don't know that. So if you're going into a listing appointment, if they have no loan or very little loan, seller financing is probably the way to go. If they have a loan, now we're trying to find out, is it FHA, VA, or USDA? Because if it is, it's assumable. So one of our agents recently took a listing and turns out the seller has a 2.99% rate on that loan. Well, guess what? That property just became and it's FHA. That property became a whole lot more attractive for a buyer because they can now buy this unit in Secondo, this unit with a 2.99 rate, or that unit with an 8 rate.
Yeah.
So now our unit stands out and potentially is worth more money too, because if I can buy that for $600 at 8%, I'd probably be willing to pay $610, $620 for the one with a 2.99 rate if I could assume it, right? So we need to find out, do they have one of those? And there's other loans potentially that could be assumable, but those 3 by default are assumable. And then conventional loans, the answer is it depends. But on those 3, and the beauty is those are the low money down loans typically. So it's great to find out if somebody has that. Now, the key is if a buyer comes in, they are going to need to come in with a down payment that covers the spread between the loan amount, the loan balance, we should say, to be more specific, the loan balance and the purchase price. So if the loan is $800 and the purchase price is $1 million, the buyer's going to have to come in with $200,000. They're going to have to cover the spread between purchase price and loan balance, and then they're going to assume the remainder. So it doesn't work well. If somebody got an FHA loan 15 years ago and they owe $100 grand and it's worth $1 million, somebody'd have to come in for $900,000 to assume that. Probably not going to work. But the good thing is, right, prices are about the same, if not lower in some markets today than they were a year ago or even a year and a half ago. So that's actually an ideal scenario is you have somebody with like a VA loan that they got in the middle of 2022 or early 2022 when the rates were like 3 or 4%. And now the property's worth about the same. So they bought it for $1 million then. It's worth $1 million today. Somebody come in with little to no money down, assume that, and take over their 4% rate. So it works better if the loan balance is higher. I know this is the exact opposite of what we just talked about. The higher the loan balance, the less money somebody's got to come in with to cover the spread.
Now, if I did that, I have $1 million condo and you assumed it. If you default, is that on me or is...
Not on an assumption, no.
Okay, cool.
No, because you're going to assume the loan and it's going to transfer over to you.
So this is great.
Yes, this is a fantastic scenario. And the amount of agents who are not asking their client, what type of loan do you have on your house? And if they found out, oh, you have a VA loan, tell me more. What's your interest rate on it? What do you owe on it? If you're not asking those questions at a listing appointment, you're actually, not only are you hurting your chances of getting listed, because I'm going to come in there, I'm going to ask those questions, but also you're doing your seller a disservice. The value of that home is potentially higher because of a assumable.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So the one caveat, the thing to know, the second thing to know, one, you got to cover the spread between the two.
Okay.
Second is if it's a VA loan, if the buyer coming in is not VA eligible, they can assume a VA loan. So me, I'm not VA eligible. I could assume your VA loan, but it does not let you off the hook on the VA entitlement. So it's going to affect your entitlement until I pay that loan off. So with VA, ideally, you're looking for a VA buyer to come in and assume it. But if not, you could still do it, but you just have to understand it's affecting your entitlement. You can only have so much money out with VA at any given time. So that's important to know with VA. FHA, not going to affect you, and USDA is not going to affect you.
How do you tell if you have a conventional loan, if it's assumable?
You'd have to read through the loan docs. Yeah.
Not going to do that. Okay, so...
Just like load them into Chat GPT and be like, is my loan assumable?
So carryback or seller financing is the first tool. Second tool is your loan assumable, which is great for USDA, FHA, and
so
VA.
Those are the simple options. The third is the more complex option. Those are simple.
Okay. Yeah, these were easy.
Yeah.
Sure. Number 3. I'm going to take more notes on this one.
So the last one is what... There's a guy named Pace Morby. If you guys follow him, Morby, he's the king of this. It's called subject to financing. And there's so many different ways this goes with subject to financing, but this is where I'm going to buy your home subject to me making the payments on your loan. So I'm buying it subject to your existing loan. So this scenario, the loan stays in your name, but I'm going to make the payments on your behalf. So this gets a little bit more tricky.
Okay.
There's a little more liability and stuff involved because in the assumption scenario, the first two scenarios, you're off the hook on the loan, right? It could be you end up not being on the loan, you being the one giving the loan in the seller financing scenario. Subject to, I'm buying your home subject to the existing financing that's in place on that home.
Okay, tell me more. I remember you talked about this on one of our morning huddles, and I go, oh, that's okay. This I don't think is something for me, someone who's very risk adverse.
Yeah.
I remember you talking about it and said, no, thank you. The assumable loan makes more sense.
Yeah, that's why I worked my way up to this one for you.
This makes me nervous.
I wanted to baby step you. So
carry on.
Subject to, now I am not the expert. We did a webinar with Pace Morby on our Fast Forward group. If you want a copy of it, DM me. I'll send you a link to the recording. It's like 2 hours.
DM you on Instagram at Kyle Whissel.
At Kyle Whissel. DM me. I'll send you the recording we did with Pace. He is the expert, so I don't want to pretend to be the expert. But the traditional scenario where this would come in is if it's a non-assumable loans, right? It's not FHA, VA, or USDA. So a non-assumable loan is where this comes into play most frequently. Is you could find out potentially what type of loan does somebody have on their property, but it's not an assumable loan. So now I'm going to come in and I'm going to purchase your home subject to the existing loan that's in place. So it's very similar to an assumption, right? That I want to take over your mortgage, but it's still in your name. I'm just going to make the payments on your behalf.
So, and is this the one where you pay me and I pay the bank?
No, I pay the bank for you. Because the bank couldn't care less where the money comes from. As long as the bank receives the payment every month, they're cool with it. In fact, as the buyer, I want to pay the bank directly because I want to make sure the money's getting to them. I don't want to give you the money and hopefully you send the money to them. Because guess what? If you don't, the bank's going to foreclose on the home and I'm the owner of the home. I'm going to lose the home if you don't make the payment on my behalf. So I'm going to pay directly to the bank to prevent that from potentially happening.
So good example. So if you don't pay, whether you pay me and I don't pay, or you just never pay, you would get foreclosed on it. Would it hurt me?
You could foreclose on me. You could kick me out of the deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know, dude. It's tricky. So there's this scenario. There's two ways this works too, to just further complicate this. So
Good.
a traditional subject to deal would be just like we talked about before, right? Somebody owes 800, they have a rate of 4% and it's worth $1 million. I say, hey, Brian, I'm going to come in. I'll give you $200,000, put 200 grand in your pocket, and then I'm going to take over your loan and I'm going to make the payments on your behalf. And you're cool with it, right? Because now, again, you potentially could sell for more money because you're able to offer it at a 4% rate versus me going to a bank and getting an 8% rate. So you're cool with it because you're probably going to get a higher price. I'm cool with it because I'm going to pay 4% as opposed to 8%.
In that example, you covered the spread.
Yeah, still covering
still
the spread.
have to.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Where, and then to add a layer to this, now you start to combine this with seller financing, and it's called a wrap. Okay. On a wrap.
WRAP?
Yep. Like, because we're wrapping two loans together. So we're wrapping your loan plus your seller finance loan together. We're wrapping that into one loan. And then I'm going to make a payment to you and to the bank in that scenario. So you're going to give me financing and I'm going to take over your financing with the bank. So I'm going to make a payment to you and I'm going to make a payment to the bank in that scenario. That's called a wrap.
Now, is that seller financing, is that to finance, to cover the spread?
The spread, yep, to help out with that spread, whether it's the whole spread, part of the spread.
So if you only have $50K and there's a $200,000 difference, you can put $50K down. I can seller finance you for $150 with the seller financing,
Yep.
and then subject to for the $800.
Yep.
Got
Complicated.
it. Easy.
Yeah. This is far more complicated. Again, I don't want to go too deep on it. I'm not the expert. I'll send you the video if you DM me at Kyle Whissel. I'll send you the Pace Morby video. If you really want to geek out on this, because I don't want to go too far and say things that I'm not 100% confident in. I just want to give you the basic high level of this. But if you want to go deeper, Pace is the guy. He's got videos on top of videos on YouTube. He's great with it. And he's very, love him or hate him, he's very long-winded. He really likes to over-explain things. So those of you guys that are high Ds, you might struggle just a little bit because he really likes to explain in depth and everything. But he's a wealth of knowledge. He's an amazing guy. Guy was literally a contractor just a matter of years ago, and now he's killing the game, buying multiple properties per week, selling his course like thousands of times over for thousands of dollars. Like, mad respect for him. He's built a phenomenal business.
Now, are these things that agents themselves need to go, okay, I need to become an expert on this? Or can they, my gut says talk to a lender, but you're not utilizing the lender on any of these?
The first two are no-brainers, and they're easy. For an agent, those are easy topics.
Okay.
Subject to is far more complicated. If you really want to get good at it, like, what's it going to cost you? I don't know what Pace's course it costs now. It's thousands. It's not like a couple $100, like, but he's the freaking man, and you're going to get all of his contracts, and you'll have his TCs available to write up stuff for you, and his title company. Like,
we don't even have a referral code for this yet, do we?
We don't.
That's
no, but
embarrassing.
you know what? He donated 2 hours of his time to share with my group, so I'm happy to promote him.
Cool.
Like, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. So I'm not looking for anything out of it. But if you really want, like, if this subject to thing is appealing to you and you want to separate yourself from the competition, like, geek out on it. Our lender hopped on the mastermind that we did with Pace, and he's like, I need to learn this more. And he invested the money to become a student, and now he has all the contracts. He's learned it so he can come and share it with our team. Like, you want to, if you're a lender and you're watching or listening right now, like, that's what the top lender in San Diego does. Says, this is amazing. This is a tool that I can add a lot of value to my agents. I don't care that it costs thousands of dollars. Sign me up. I want to know this better than any other lender in San Diego. That's what makes Scott Evans #1 in San Diego.
Little plug for Scott there. What up, dude?
Again, man, I
Yeah.
respect people who put the work in, who level themselves up. Like, I respect what Pace has done. I respect Scott's done. Like, I'm happy to give shout outs where shout outs are deserved.
Wonderful. So the 3 tools or questions, are they interested in doing seller financing is number 1. Number 2 is, do they have a loan that is or can be assumable?
Yep.
USDA, FHA, MVA by default are.
Yes.
Are there any ways that those can't be assumable?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And number 3, subject to financing, a little bit more involved, but again, can offer you that extra level of separation that 99% of the agents have never heard of.
Yeah.
If you become the expert and one of Pace's students or however you learn it, that's going to give you a leg up for years and years and years to come. So very cool.
Yeah. So are you open to financing? If not, what kind of financing do you have? And then it's going to be one of three angles. It's either a good rate with an assumable product, or it's a good rate with a non-assumable product, and we're going to go subject to, or it's just a market rate and we're going to go traditional. But if we ask the right questions, we're going to go down one of those paths.
Yeah, and that gives you all sorts of new marketing opportunities. Think about connecting with your buyers and say, hey, I have a home that you can get a 3% interest rate on right now. That email is going to crush. That phone call, that email is going to, or that text message.
And your listing is going to stand out. Not only are you going to stand out from the competition at the listing appointment, because you're going to be like, whoa, the other agents didn't ask me these questions. Guaranteed you get the listing. And now you're going to put that thing on the market and you're going to market the heck out of it that you have a 2, 3, 4% rate. And your listing is going to stand out from the competition, which you're going to need to do in this market we're going into because it's becoming a buyer's market. You got to make your listing stand out. So if you're the listing that has the 3 or 4% assumable on it, or seller with subject to, or seller finance, like if you have what nobody else has, you will get what nobody else gets.
My brain is spinning. It's time to go to a different topic. I can't go down this path.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you guys got some value out of this today. If you did, if you are watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up button. Let YouTube know. If you have a question, throw it in the comment section. Brian and I respond to all of those. And if you want more of our content, hit the subscribe button and turn those notifications on with a little bell. If you are listening on a podcast platform, make sure to subscribe and hook us up with a review. Those reviews mean the world to us. And yeah, before we wrap, one of the things we like to do on the show is what we refer to as our Whissel widget of the week. This is something that saves us time, makes us more money, or just helps us have a little bit more fun.
Mine is, I just got the new iPhone, and I already scratched the screen, which is...
Ooh, good job.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get a new screen. I'm pissed. Anyways, they have a feature called action mode in video. And so if you go to your video section, and up at the top left, there's a little running man right next to the flash that's, I think, off by default. If you turn it on, it turns on action mode. I don't know exactly how it does it. I would assume it films at a higher rate and then down, whatever, it doesn't matter. But what it'll do is it'll allow you to get walking footage or handheld footage, especially if you're zoomed in, at a much smoother rate. And so I don't want to say it gets rid of the need for a gimbal, but it definitely helps. I use this. I went down to Mexico to photograph some properties. I used my phone primarily for the video stuff because I didn't have my gimbal, and it was super smooth. Like zoomed in 5 times and walking, and yeah, there was a little bit of movement, but it was really, really smooth. So action mode on the iPhone. Android people will probably say like, "Oh, I had that for 7 years already," but
you still can't send a blue bubble. So there's that.
That's my widget. Kyle, what do you got? What do you got
Oh,
for us?
I am so struggling right now. I'm going to share one though that I learned about this from a friend who's a photographer. We were out in Montana. You kind of get a little bit of the northern lights up there depending on the time of year and stuff like that, but the sky is just so different than when you're in a big city. So shooting pictures of light up there is just so special. And so a lot of people don't realize this. On your iPhone, you go into night mode, right? You see the little thing up at the top that tells you like, oh, you're gonna have to hold your phone steady for a second or for 3 seconds or whatnot. You probably have run into that when you're in a low light environment. What people don't realize is you can hit the little down arrow and you can actually go in and adjust how long that night mode is going to be, or how long you're going to expose that photo for. You can actually expose it for up to 30 seconds. And so obviously if you're going to do 30 seconds, you have to have your phone 100% stabilized, hit the button, and then just go have a conversation and come back. But the quality of photo, the amount of light that the iPhone can bring in when you do a 30-second exposure is absolutely magical. And so I would just encourage you, the next time you're out, if you're camping or something like that, where you just have like a amazingly clear sky, go in on your iPhone into the night mode setting, adjust the duration of that beyond the 1 or 3 second default to 10 seconds to potentially 30 seconds. And you can capture some amazing still images.
I didn't know you can do 30 seconds. That's really cool. You can also do things where if you're photographing like...
Why you got to one-up me? Can't we just let me like...
No, I'm going to add to it because the stars is cool. It's one thing. Depending on how long the exposure is, you might get some they call them light trails where it looks like it's moving. But you can do things where you're taking pictures of like cars and you'll get the light trails from the cars, which is really cool. Or if you're doing it of like a lake or a river, it gets that really still look. So I'm going to figure that out. And next time I'm out somewhere, I'm going to try it out. It's pretty cool.
There you go. Look, we taught Bryan something about photography.
Always learning.
Yeah. Cool, guys. Well, hopefully you got a lot of value out of the show today. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Kyle Whissel with eXp Realty.
I'm Bryan Coaching.
We'll see you next week. Wait. Before you leave, I want to share some more tips and tricks that we're using in our business to take it to that next level. Just click right here. And don't forget to subscribe. Click right here.